4. The test of a good theory lies in its ability to explain the past, for only if it does can we trust what it may tell us about the future. Tatalog's past, however, was the decade and a half in which he ran his experiment. Herodotus offers the opportunity to apply Tatalog's findings, admittedly without his careful controls, to an age far removed from our own. They hold up, across this distance, surprisingly well. After crossing the Hellespont, Xerxes advanced, confident that the size of his forces and the opulence of his entourage would make resistance futile. Even if all the Greeks, and moreover all the men who live in the western countries, were assembled together, they would not be able to fight me. The king's plan seemed to be working as he proceeded through Thrace, Macedonia, and Thessaly, but his progress necessarily was very slow. His army was so large that it drank rivers and lakes dry before all of its units could get to the other side. Lions, still flourishing in the region, developed a taste for the camels carrying his supplies, and Xerxes was exhausting the capacity of even cooperative Greeks to meet his culinary requirements. One gave thanks that the king ate only once a day. For if his city had been asked to provide breakfast on the scale of the dinner, Xerxes demanded, its inhabitants must either have fled or been ground to dust, worse than any people on earth had ever been. Now could Xerxes flatten all topography. The Persians, to enter Attica, would have to march through the narrow pass at Thermopylae, and it was there that Leonidas' Spartans, a far inferior force hastily recruited, delayed the invaders for several days. Neither Leonidas nor his elite 300 survived, but their refusal to surrender showed that Xerxes could no longer rely on intimidation alone to get what he wanted. Meanwhile, late summer storms in the Aegean were battling his feet, while the Athenians, following the orders of their Admiral General Themistocles, were evacuating their city. This left Xerxes with a Napoleon dilemma at Moscow in 1812. What do you do when you have captured your objective only to find it abandoned and bad weather on the way? The King of Kings fell back, characteristically, upon still more intimidation. He burned the Acropolis, and then mounted another throne atop another promontory overlooking another body of water, from which to witness what remained of his navy complete his triumph. Surely smoke rising from their holiest temple would demoralize the Athenian citizen rowers. But the bay was a Salamis. The Thermes were trained, and the Delphic oracle had promised safety behind wooden walls, presumably the kind that floated. So, as Xerxes watched, the Greeks sent his fleet to the bottom and slaughtered the survivors, who in any event hadn't been taught how to swim. The king had no choice now but to accept, much too belatedly, his uncle's advice to return home. Themistocles hastened the king's departure by spreading the rumor that the Hellespont bridges would be the Athenians' next target. Terrified, Xerxes hastened to get back across, leaving his demoralized armies to fend for themselves. The Greeks then defeated them at Plataea, but left further retribution, imaginatively, to a playwright. Achilles' Persians, first performed 8 years after Salamis, depicts the bedraggled Xerxes limping into his own capital to the lamentations of all who had earlier acclaimed him, and to this warning from the chastened ghost of Darius: never, being mortal, ought we cast our thoughts too high. Herodotus draw on Achilles for his history. Could he have also for his account of the dreams, evoking Darius' spirit, if not his ghost, that draw Xerxes to the highest point in the first place? There is no way we know for sure. Spirits are shadowy things, but it is fun to imagine this particular shadow, whoever he represented, using his supernatural powers to zoom forward in time to absorb, and then take back to the now disconsolate King of Kings. Professor Tatlock's warning about how often foxes are right and hedgehogs are trumps.